Welcome to This Weekend Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another special episode of the This Weekend Coworking podcast. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Jason, CEO at Vast Coworking Group. Jason, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you are the perfect person to tell us about the fundamentals of coworking, the fundamentals of franchising in coworking.
Sure, Hector. First of all, I tell people, if you look for me on LinkedIn, there are a million Jason Anderson. So I'm one of many. So I appreciate the helpful intro there, but I had to add my middle initial, Jason R. Anderson, even, so you could find me on LinkedIn. To answer that question, I'll start at the beginning and spend like a minute giving my background on how I think I became interested into franchising. First thing, I was youngest of 10, born in upstate New York, but at 17, I joined the Air Force and I became an avionic electrical engineer. Now, that may seem like a strange path, but franchising is basically engineering business systems. So I have a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, which is a philosophy of constant improvement and development, which is needed in a franchise. So a franchise is constantly implementing and upgrading and changing year over year. But most importantly, through my time in the military, I got out and started buying and flipping houses using my VA loan. I got into real estate. And if you're not familiar, every major real estate company is a franchise, right? So I built a real estate brokerage, and then I was looking at expanding that. I grew to about 200 agents, won some awards. The Realtor, I was in Cover Realtor magazine, the first Forbes 30 under 30, when that was cool to be in. But then I quickly realized, hey, I have 200 agents in 3 offices. Keller Williams has 3,000 offices and 100,000 agents. I'm like, how is that possible? They were a franchise. And that was the extent of knowledge that I had about franchising at that point, is that I was in an industry that my major competitors, not one of them, all of them were franchises. So I figured these all seem like smart people that if every single one of them franchise their business, maybe I should look into that. So I Googled how to franchise your business and turned my business into a franchise. Luckily, before I got myself in too much trouble with that, because I didn't know the ins and outs of franchising at the time, somebody acquired that from me. And then I came across another company called Transworld Business Advisors, which is a franchise. So it's the largest business brokerage franchise currently in the world, but that was just getting started. That company is owned by United Franchise Group. So I ended up becoming a part of a franchise that's a part of a franchisor that owns multiple franchise brands to make this confusing. And I helped launch Transworld. I moved to California doing the Transworld business. And Transworld does 3 things: helps you buy a business, sell a business, or turn a business into a franchise. And that third piece really fit my personality profile. I like meeting with business owners, understanding the concept, strategy, development, the legal paperwork, the launching of that. So we launched a consulting company called Accurate Franchising, which helps companies become a franchise. And as I mentioned, I've written a book. You can find that on Amazon. Super simple, How to Franchise Your Business, right? It's no fluff. It's mostly 5-star reviews. I have a few 3. The 3-star reviews are, there is no fluff, but I say it, right? I'm telling people there is no fluff. This is truly like a school book on how to franchise your business. I'm an online course junkie, so I also turned this into a course, which is franchisingschool.com, which I've made free. I think there is some premium stuff in there that I had, but you use my name, Jason, and that gives you premium access to all of it. So I truly give it away. About 5,000 people have come through that course since I launched that. But anyways, my point with that is we had one of our first clients, and that was VentureX. Right. So one of the first consulting clients we had was the concept of VentureX, which was one location starting in 2012. And 4 years later, we were meeting with them. So one of the first questions I get is, can you franchise a business with one location? The answer is yes. You could actually franchise an idea if you have enough background or experience in that space. Now, whether or not anybody would buy that is another question. But can you franchise it? The answer is yes. Similar to, you could buy a domain name and get an LLC from LegalZoom and you're legally a company. It's not that simple, but the logic holds true. What I really wanted to get across is, should you franchise your business? And I think this is the biggest mistake people make getting into franchising is they get pitched by a franchise consultant or somebody, and they make it seem like the easy button that you're going to become McDonald's overnight. If that's what you're expecting, my course or content is definitely not that, because franchising has its pros and cons. Some industries are just dominated by franchising. It's one of those things that everybody knows exist, kind of like Bitcoin, but very few people can actually explain what that means, right? Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, for most people that are tech nerds or like myself, that's all the same type of thing, right? But if you nerd out on that, you really know the difference. So a lot of people know, again, it's hard to go a day without doing business with the franchise, whether it's hotel, gas station, UPS store with your Amazon returns, your janitorial service, your cleaning service, your dry cleaner, probably where you're eating lunch. All of these industries are dominated by franchising. In 2016, when we were looking to franchise Venture X, that was not the case for this industry. I was actually surprised that this industry was so light on franchising. Part of that is because everybody was able to raise zillions of dollars through investors and seemingly had no recourse on raising that money. The need to make money just wasn't there, which is not possible in most industries, right? You're not going to go and somebody fund your bagel shop and give you $100 million to open up thousands of bagel shops across the country. There's almost no logical path for growth in fast casual, service-based businesses, retail stores outside of franchising. That seems like a strong statement. But if you own a hotel, a restaurant, a local service-based business, there's almost no other logical path for development and growth outside of franchising. Unless you're independently wealthy. Even then, you find a lot of independently wealthy people franchise their business. Coming into co-working, there were two meaningful franchisors. They were Office Evolution and Intelligent Office, which, not to spoil the end of the story, we now own both of those franchisors. So we started with one single location, turned Venture X into a franchise, but I did a strategic analysis against the competitors when we developed the brand. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you the Cliff Note version of my book and course, and it's a 4-step methodology to franchising your business. And it's an acronym I created called STROLL, like a stroll in the park, STROLL. That's the most creative thing I could come up with. But it made sense in the order of the steps of the strategy, right? And STROLL is an acronym for strategy, operation, legal, launch, right? So that's my 4-step methodology for turning your business into a franchise. Now, this could be co-working, this could be fast casual. The first piece of that is strategy. You need to know who are the other franchisors, what are they doing, how did they do it, how much do they charge, what's the TAM, the total addressable market, who are your competitors. So it's the strategy portion. You're really building a business plan and understanding what does being a franchisor mean, how do you make money as a franchisor, what do you have to do, how do you provide training, how do you provide support. So we put together a strategic franchise business plan, right? So you have to know how to read franchise disclosure documents, the ins and outs of that process. And then that kind of gives the green light or the red light. And every now and then there's a yellow. And to be honest with co-working, it was a yellow. We were like, whoa, hold on. The day we were doing this in 2016, Regis was $4.5 billion revenue. WeWork was a $40 billion company. They had unlimited resources. There was a few other players coming on the scene. And Office Evolution had about 60 locations and Intelligent Office about 50. But we thought, hey, there is a lot of opportunity here, right? That the unique thing we knew at that time was that the two other, also Serendipity Labs, I apologize, they're no longer currently franchising to my knowledge. I think they've went managed service, but at that time, Serendipity Labs was also a franchise. So it was those three. What we knew at that time is my partner and friend and mentor, Ray Titus, started Sinorama in 1986. His father started Minute Maid Press in the 70s. So all the family has ever done is franchising. So we own Sinorama. We have 1,800 franchisees ourselves. We own 10 franchise brands. That includes the 3 co-working. So we're a multi-brand. We're the largest privately owned multi-brand franchisor. So to give you perspective, We have 1,800 franchisees in every industrialized country across those 10 brands. I'm pointing that out because in 2016, when we looked at this, we knew that we were the only franchisor that was looking to get into co-working. All the other companies were co-working companies looking to franchise. So now again, that sounds like a sales pitch, but the minute anybody turns their business into a franchise, you immediately realize on the first franchisee, you are now in two businesses. You may have built whatever business you have, your co-working space, but now somebody has purchased the rights from you to do that. You're now a franchisor, and you have to provide customer service support to somebody that runs a business that you don't own. They're just using your name, right? And that becomes very difficult for a lot of companies. So that's the first thing we realized is we were the first franchisor getting into the space. The second thing we realized is that when I sold my real estate brokerage, I had a quick stint in hospitality because I had some friends that made a lot of money. Their family wealth came from hotels. And I'm like, I like staying at hotels. I'm into real estate. This seems fun. So I started down the Cornell School of Hospitality Management, dove all into the hospitality industry. Everything I hated about my single family rental properties, I quickly realized is just 1,000x in a hotel. There's a bathroom in every room. It's 24/7, 365. So I quickly realized it's not for me. But I learned a lot about the history of Marriott and Hilton. And if you're not familiar, those are all franchises, right? So almost all of them are franchise locations. What struck me, though, is Marriott and Hilton and hospitality has already consolidated in a very meaningful way, right? So you can join Marriott Bonvoy and your points count at all the 30 plus Marriott brands. If you're a Hilton Honors guy, same logic. Why co-working hadn't adopted this was bewildering to me by 2016, and they still haven't. So in our initial strategic planning, I said there's a unique opportunity to create a brand that's different than Office Evolution, different than Intelligent Office, different than WeWork. Let's focus on being the Marriott or the JW Marriott in suburban markets. Whereas there were other brands, we saw we could be this 4.5 star concept in the suburbs where WeWork and all these other brands were really focused on CBDs and downtown markets. So again, that's part of a strategic analogy. And in writing, I put, there's nobody as the Marriott of co-working. I've had the pleasure of meeting Mark Dixon. They do have multiple brands, but they didn't build like a Bonvoy program. If you really weren't an industry insider, you could go to Europe and go to HQ and come to spaces in America and not realize these are owned by the same company if you really didn't care about that. So we wanted to put that together. Also, Regis has had their hand in franchising multiple times, but is also not a franchisor. So first step is strategy is you have to know who you're competing against, what they do, how they do it, how much they charge, and understand the financial modeling of being a franchisor. That's the first step. The second step of the 4-step process is operations. Once you decide that you want to do it, how are you going to operationally run a franchisor? Are you going to take your staff from your existing business? Are you going to partner with a franchise organization like ourselves? Do you have a private equity partner? Do you have a family member that owns a franchise? You have to put together that operational portion. Like, where is the training going to happen? Are you going to train franchisees at your up and running space? Are you going to book a hotel room? Who's going to do that training, right? If you're running your space, who's going to run your space when you go do the training? Who's going to help that person find the real estate? Who's going to purchase the furniture? Who's going to do the website? Who's going to handle the marketing? So you need an operational plan of how do you actually execute being a franchisor. And then once you've done strategy and walked through an operational plan, then comes the legal portion. If you're not familiar, franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. And then beneath that, it's regulated on a state level, and there's 3 different types of states. So you're probably going to want a lawyer or somebody or a franchise development firm to help you put together the franchise disclosure document that's required to be a franchisor. Ours are about 150 pages each. So this is not something you're just going to sit down with the Word document or go to LegalZoom and just fill out. You have to have the fees, the partners, earnings claims, like all of these different steps go into that. So there's 23 specific items. You have to have audited financials. So again, I highly recommend not trying to do this on your own. And there's multiple different companies. Obviously, we would love to talk to anybody, that. And I've already mentioned it. If you own a co-working space, I will give you my course for free. I will send you my book for free. No strings attached. Just email me. It's there, franchisingschool.com. Sign up, get it for free. Use the code Jason. I truly mean, I just want the information out there. I have worked with a couple other franchisors in this space, and I won't mention their names, but hopefully they would tell you that I had not charged them anything and I just gave them free advice. So I truly mean that. Strategy, operation, legal. And then the fourth portion of that is launch. Unless you already have friends with deep pockets or customers or people ready to buy, you have to develop a sales and marketing strategy to get your franchise out there and sell that franchise. So you need strategy to develop the concept, operational, who's going to run the operations piece of the franchise, whether you have one or 100, legal, which typically you're going to want a lawyer or some type of development firm to complete that and then review it and give a stamp of approval, and then launch. Right? So that's really the 4 steps methodology that I've created. Now, each one of those has a lot of sub bullet points, but that's really the basics. And again, if you can't make it through the strategy, don't do it.
Yeah.
If you make it through the strategy and you can't make it past who's going to do the operations, don't do it. If you make it through strategy and operations and you're just completely freaked out that you have to get and keep it update every year, 150-page document, don't do it. If you do strategy, operations, legal, and you're like, well, I don't have any money for marketing, I don't want to do sales, I don't want to go to trade shows, I don't want to do webinars, don't do it. My course and book is a 4-step method of talking yourself out of doing it. Now, obviously, that's counterintuitive, but I truly mean it as that. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Jason, so you've told us why you shouldn't do it for very good reasons why you shouldn't. You've told us how you have helped others. But why would a co-working space want to franchise? What's the benefits of me turning my successful network or maybe 3-4 locations into a franchise?
Good question. In full transparency, I started this course as a reverse sell, but I ended up over years, so many people coming through it, just making it free. But I do mean the content as I went through, and I've got a lot of positive feedback on that. So for why you would want to do it is, for most companies and industries, there's not very many other meaningful ways for expansion. I've met a lot of really good mom and pop, and that term endearingly, right? I met a lot of mom and pop co-working space operators that they know and they feel for a decade they've been much better than the publicly traded or the large, big organizations, and they have some kind of unique spin or something that they have. The clients love them, the members love them. The websites are great. They've nailed each piece of the pie. But with the revenue from that space, it's not logical that they can go out and get 10 more leases and then do that 10 more times on their own. So the first realization people come up to is if you want to expand, there's only a few options you have, right? There's one, you have the money and you do it all on your own. And for a lot of industries, that may make sense. For a lot of industries, that makes absolutely no sense. The risk is not worth the reward, right? That's the first piece, right? Is if you look at what are your methods for expansion? It's self-expansion. Maybe you bring on investors, and at that point, you serve 2 masters. You have your customers and you have the investor that now wants a return, right? But then you're still the one running all of the spaces and the people, right? And then the third is franchising. Right. You can replace investment for finance or any other person that gives you money, but just let's loosely define that term. The benefit of franchising is you could still run your space if you want to, and then you're basically licensing your IP to somebody else to help them also launch and start their own business that then you receive a royalty, typically off the top as a revenue percentage of that space. You're incentivized by them being successful, right? So let's say you package that up and you sell that to somebody. So instead of providing consulting, which a lot of consultants provide, co-working consulting, you're licensing them not just your consulting and your know-how, you're also giving them your brand, right? So I'm taking your concept, your logo, your website, and instead of them having to create all that from scratch, they just become another location on your website. You're going to train them everything you know in a formulated method of how to be successful running that space. And in exchange, they pay you an upfront franchise fee. And then as you help that location grow, you get a percentage of royalty, but the franchisee is managing the employees and they're signing the lease, right? So you're expanding your brand through and using franchisees' resources in a mutually beneficial relationship, right? And then you help them grow. The better they do, the better you do. If they don't do well, you don't do well, right? You have to then list that, and there's issues inside of that. So it creates this mutually beneficial relationship. You get somebody that doesn't have to start from scratch. And if you could imagine, not having to start from scratch gives you a much better chance of success than starting completely on your own.
Absolutely. So tell me, you brought up some of the numbers. I know you've got experience across multiple brands and you've done franchising across multiple industries. Those 4 steps, what is the usual setup cost for turning a good business into a franchise? Is it $100,000? Is it $1 million? What's a normal spend to go from I have a successful business to I'm ready to launch?
Sure, good question. The truth is, it's all over the place. But generally speaking, you're going to spend between $30,000 to $100,000. And the difference in that, I'm a car guy, is looking at like the window sticker on a car, right? You see the base price, and then obviously you can go up from there, depending upon typically how involved you want a company to be. Like our typical internal consulting for our Accurate franchising company is right at about $70,000. And that includes all 4 steps of that process. Now, that could be broken up into buckets, meaning we do have a program, depending upon the industry, it's $9,500 to like $19,500 to just do the strategic analysis, right? Because a lot of people don't make it past that. And I typically also have testimonials there that it's the best $9,500 I spent because we realize we're not ready or we don't want to do it or it makes sense and it's credited. And then same thing. So you could break that up. And then we also have a program for launch, right? Now, on the lower end, you could just go the 100% legal route where you're just getting the documents. So that's where you could get down to $20,000 typically. But then every single state has some states have a filing fee to register in that. So there's fees that you have to pay to the state in addition to getting the document. So placeholder would be $20,000 to $100,000 with an average probably $50,000 to $75,000 to turn your concept into a franchise.
Got it. And then let's talk a little bit about, you've had a successful launch. What is the average, like in an industry like co-working or office or non-retail, what's the average franchising fee? What's like the acceptable royalty? What does that look like? I'm trying to get a feel. If I'm spending $100K to become a franchise, what is my return on investment in year 1, 2, 3?
Good question. Generally speaking, $50,000 to $80,000 is a franchise fee. Some food brands get down into $20,000, $30,000, but $20,000 to $80,000 with $50,000 probably being the average across all the franchises. That's the upfront franchise fee. And then on the back end, your typical royalty is 6 to 8% of revenue of that business. So easy math, let's say you run a co-working space, right? And that co-working space does $1 million in top line revenue, right? You then turn that into a franchise for $75,000. You then sell one franchise and you get $50,000 franchise fee. That, is a big piece there. Now, granted, you could spend the whole $50,000 marketing to find that person, but let's say you don't. Let's say you have a customer, a client, or a friend, and you have zero costs. You could have zero costs. A lot of my franchise clients do know their first franchisee the day they franchise. And then let's say you help that person 2 or 3 years in. First year, let's say they do $300,000 and you're getting 6%. So that's $18,000. Let's say next year they do $600,000. That's $36,000. Let's say year 3, they get up to $1 million. Now you have a $60,000 royalty stream, right? So that's how you could stair step the financial modeling. As a first year franchisor, you may want to have a lower fee or a lower royalty. So that could be skewed. There's billionaire franchisees and there's multi-billion-dollar franchise brands, right? Everybody knows McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, UPS store, Orange Theory Fitness.
That's really interesting. I mean, it's just fascinating to break down the numbers and see how quickly you can get to an ROI. But let's say someone's gone through the 4 steps and they've had the launch. What are the biggest mistakes that new franchisees or new franchisors do right out the gate?
So our United Franchise Group, which is our parent organization of Vast, we kind of have a tagline. We have one customer, our franchisee. If they're successful, we're successful. Now, that could sound very cheesy until you break it down to what does that actually mean. And I've said it already in the statement that most companies that franchise are industry experts. They're really good at food. Like they know everything about food, every ingredient that's ever went into their dish. Co-working operators are great at community. What they're not good at is teaching, helping other people do it, and they're not good at being a franchisor. So this mistake I see people make is they become a franchise, and instead of switching gears and focusing or becoming a franchisor, they end up living this split personality. They're spending 60, 70%. They used to spend 100% of their time running their co-working space. Now they've sold 2, 3, 4 franchises. They're still spending 100% of their time managing their co-working spaces. Now they went from 50 hours a week to 75 hours a week because they didn't have to support these franchisees. And they don't effectively figure out how to switch from being an operator to a franchisor, right? That's where you start to see conflict and interest and resources. That's by far the number one. The second would be is you sell a few franchises, those people aren't successful, you're pretty much dead in the water right out the gates. You have to have a lot of resources and backup and support and be able to help those franchisees. Those would probably be really the two most common. It's why I tell people you could do micro franchising. I never pitch on anybody wanting to be the next McDonald's, right? But let's say you've ran a co-working space for 10 years. You probably have a business owner that's in your space that's well-funded. Maybe you want to sell your space, but instead of just walking completely away, you franchise it first, right? Turn it into a franchise, sell the franchise, right? So get the cash influx and then collect the royalty from your original space. And now you could focus on developing and growing. And let's say you only do that 3 or 4 or 5 times in your region. I just laid out the numbers, right? So if you ran $1 million a year revenue co-working space and you dropped X amount of dollars to the bottom line, whatever that number is, you figure it out. You could reverse engineer pretty quickly how many franchises you need to sell to replace that income. And that number could be 3, 4, 5 franchisees ever. You don't have to launch and try to be the next global enterprise. You may decide I'm gonna start a local franchise company, right? I'm gonna be regional in my market. We're gonna open up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations, and that's good. Or you can have complete world domination mindset, move forward with that.
I love that. Jason, before I let you go, franchising for many has, I want to say, a dirty taste. Like it's got a bad reputation in some markets. What do you say to those folks who may be thinking that this is a way to water down co-working or to make it commoditized? Any thoughts around addressing that?
Sure. Twofold, right? If you just mention co-working to most people, their mind does not go straight to WeWork, and the thought is doom and gloom for the whole industry. So there's some aspect of that's just how people think, right? The less you know about something, the more plausible it is that you're going to think it's a negative thing, right? But the truth is franchising dominates most industries that it's involved in. And by far, likelihood of success is typically higher as a franchisee than a solo entrepreneur, right? So most people know that SBA publishes, right? There may be out of every 10 businesses that start, 80% fail or something within the first 5 years, right? Franchisors have to list those failures, right? So the truth is you're astronomically higher to succeed in a business doing it with somebody that has already done it, right? Like the commonality of that makes sense, right? And most people can't go a day without doing business with a franchisor, right? So any context that there's I could argue the opposite with people that just get funded by random investors in other countries that have no insight to the business and it's just a financial metric, right? At the end of the day, I'd say do your own diligence and come to your own conclusion on that, right? Don't buy into the hype. I do discovery days and we've had 52,000 people inquire about owning our franchise brands. 52,000. And I have an outside sales team. We meet with those people. And then before they come, they do a fully refundable application fee. I meet with those people on Zoom, right? So I hear the questions and it's all work this, Regis that, bankruptcy this, commercial landlords this. It's okay. Yeah, let's go through each one of those comments and questions and concerns and let's get down to the nuts and bolts if this makes sense. And again, I think when you do that, it makes a lot of sense. And if it doesn't specifically for your scenario and you can personally fund and you want to manage all of your locations. There's a few people that have done that. Good for them, right? If you want to manage that staff and you could do that, if you could raise money and the investors fund it, great. But I think it would be foolish to not consider franchising as an expansion method in any service-based business.
Love that. Jason, thank you very much for joining the podcast, for sharing so openly, for doing this fundamentals of franchising and co-working with us. I cannot wait to hear what people think. If people do have questions for you, where's the best place for them to reach you?
LinkedIn, Jason at vastcoworking.com. You can go to franchisingschool.com. If you don't want to talk to me, the course is literally free to sign up. If I think there is like a premium access, something I have on there, use the code Jason, Jason. They'll give you 100% free access on there. I love the feedback. If you want the PDF version, you could buy the book on Amazon, download that. But if you just email me, I'll just send it to you via PDF. So if I could just help in any way, let me know. And then obviously, if you guys wanted to do business with us or wanted to consider how we consider brands, that would be great. If not, 100%, I'll keep all of those resources for free and you can have access to that.
Jason, thank you very much.
No problem.